the 80th United Nations General Assembly. Before hundreds of cameras, and in the presence of the world's most powerful leaders, an unexpected moment shook the global order. The young president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré, rose to his feet. He looked straight at the representatives of the International Monetary Fund, raised his hand, and declared, "Africa has never been in debt. We are not your debtors. It is you who owe us." The chamber froze. A silence heavier than stone filled the hall. Was this a reckless outburst? Or the birth of a new chapter in Africa's history? And above all, how would the IMF respond? The drama began on October 2025 at the opening of the UN's Economic and Financial Committee. The agenda: global debt restructuring. In truth, everyone knew the real subject: Africa. IMF officials, World Bank economists, WTO representatives, they had all come armed with statistics and polished speeches. But what none of them expected was a thunderous indictment, 7 accusations that Traoré called the IMF's 7 crimes in Africa. Suffocating under a $3 billion bailout from 2022. Côte d'Ivoire, chained to over $3 billion in IMF obligations. Money recycled as interest, not as investment. The forced privatization of Ghana's cocoa industry, once the pride of the nation, now swallowed by foreign corporations, leaving farmers with crumbs while profits fled abroad. In Mali, schools collapsed. In Senegal, hospitals decayed. IMF conditions demanded cuts, children and patients paid the price. The IMF-driven devaluation of the naira in 1986 destroyed the middle class overnight, sparking decades of inflation and instability. Loans to corruption. Liberia and Sierra Leone received IMF money even as governments were accused of looting. Citizens saw no progress, only the weight of inherited debt. It was nothing less than a public trial of the global financial order. And when Ibrahim Traoré closed with the words, "This is not about money. This is about honor. About the dignity of Africa," the chamber erupted. Applause thundered across the hall. African delegations stood to their feet, nodding, clapping, smiling with pride. On the opposite side, IMF delegates sat frozen, papers shuffling, eyes lowered, silence heavy. But the speech was only the spark. Within minutes, Traoré's words blazed across Africa, broadcast live into living rooms, radios, and phones. In Ghana, commentators tied his defiance to their own scars from IMF bailouts. In Burkina Faso, people remembered Thomas Sankara's legendary words, "We will not pay the debt." Only now, the message traveled at the speed of light. From city streets to remote villages, Africans everywhere heard the same voice daring to say no. Inside the UN hall, the lines were unmistakable. The IMF in silence. Africa in applause. It wasn't just a speech. It was a clash. A challenge. A reckoning. For millions watching, it felt like justice at last. What began as applause was already shifting into something larger, a movement. A wave of unity crossing borders. In New York, African diplomats moved quickly. Delegates from Mali, Niger, and Senegal approached Burkina Faso's team, whispering of a joint declaration. Within hours, the word spread. Africa could stand as one, demanding new terms, not just accepting old rules. Traoré's words spread like wildfire, through TVs, radios, and phones. From cities to villages, from Africa to the diaspora, people repeated his message. This is about dignity, not money. In Ouagadougou, crowds celebrated in the streets. Mothers spoke with hope. young people felt new pride. Across Mali, Senegal, Ghana, people saw their own struggles reflected in his defiance. For the first time in decades, they felt represented. Unity was stronger than fear. But the risks were real. Analysts warned the IMF could cut aid, raise interest, or tighten loans. Investors grew nervous. Aid groups feared food shortages. Yet Traoré stood firm. On national TV, he told his people, "This fight is larger than numbers on a balance sheet. It is a fight for self-respect." And with that, the spark had become a movement one Africa could no longer ignore. In Burkina Faso, market women, teachers, even soldiers repeated his words with pride. A fragile but undeniable unity was taking root. But in Washington, the reaction was sharp. The U.S. State Department called his speech reckless. Behind closed doors, officials saw it as a direct challenge to American influence. Yet across America, African American scholars, churches, and activists praised Traoré, linking his words to a longer struggle for dignity and justice. The media split. Mainstream outlets warned of risk and isolation. Independent voices hailed his courage, a poor, landlocked nation daring to stand against the world's richest powers. In Europe, unease grew. Paris and Brussels feared others might resist debt payments. Germany urged stability. Behind the formal tone was clear alarm: the IMF's authority was being shaken. Meanwhile, Moscow and Beijing saw opportunity. Russian outlets called him a modern revolutionary. China's state media framed him as proof that Africa had friends outside the West. From Harlem to Ouagadougou, from Paris to Beijing, one young leader's words had set the world on edge. Chinese media contrasted its railways and bridges with IMF austerity, framing the future of Africa in the East. Within days, analysts spoke of a possible realignment. If others followed Burkina Faso, global finance itself could shift. Some saw hope in stronger BRICS ties. Others feared hunger and isolation. But from Latin America to Asia, activists praised Traoré's defiance. On social media, his words spread under hashtags of dignity, justice, and sovereignty. At the African Union in Addis Ababa, leaders quoted Traoré's words, proposing an African sovereignty fund. For the first time in decades, nations were not reacting to IMF terms. They were imagining alternatives. It was no longer about pressuring Burkina Faso back into line. The real danger, for the West, was that others might follow. Ibrahim Traoré was no longer just the president of a small nation, he had become a symbol, a bridge to an Africa free from Western control. By trying to silence him, critics had amplified his voice. Inside Africa, the shift was even greater. Children memorized his words as proverbs. Musicians sang of dignity. Writers placed his name beside Nkrumah, Lumumba, and Sankara. Traoré had not only survived the storm, he turned it into the wind beneath his rise. Now he stands as a living emblem of defiance and hope. His UN speech will be remembered not as words, but as a declaration of freedom. Across Africa, people felt for the first time that dignity could no longer be bought or sold in the name of debt. The challenges of poverty and insecurity remain. But something deeper has been born. A belief that Africa's destiny belongs to Africans alone.